So I'll assume you can see the screen. If you can't, please let me know. So why we're here? Well, we want to understand the nuances of entering the US market, of course, and figure out what are some things that we can understand before we make the investment so that we can move faster, so that we manage our risk accordingly. But hopefully along the way, I can provide some insight and also recommend some more tactical things that you can do now, that you can do to prepare, resources you can consult, and so on. So there are really three perspectives, and the way that I think about it is you have the playing field, right? This is the environment you're operating in. Then there are the rules. So it's less market driven. It's more about the restrictions, the guardrails, all the guidelines that you have to follow. Of course, those are different. And finally, the players. So the people that you encounter, not just the customers, not just the investors, but your partners, your regulators, your stakeholders are going to be different in the U.S. than they are in Singapore, Malaysia, anywhere else. And so I'm really going to focus on this last one, the players. Just having heard what's important to you, I'm going to skip ahead now. And of course, if there's time, we can always go back on this. But let's talk about the players. So on one level, you want to start with a blank slate in terms of your customer intelligence. And I think that there are a few principles that are worth really zooming in on how to conduct market research, how to do it effectively, how to do it efficiently, and quickly, right? So that you can get actionable intelligence and move fast. How to project good service in this market, in the United States market. The customer's expectation of service is astronomically high. If you get nothing out of this conversation, please hear me when I say there is nobody that's harder to please than the American consumer, the American buyer, whether it's B2B, B2C, does not matter. When somebody writes a check, and this is true of an investor too, what they expect in return, they have high expectations of you. And why is that? If you are selling bubble tea to a consumer, or you're selling an autonomous robot for an enterprise customer, it's really no different. There are many, many, many alternatives. This is a very complex consumer and B2B marketplace where there are many alternatives. And what happens when you have alternatives? It's very easy to walk away from option number one when you have a dozen more alternatives right next to you. So you don't have, the switching costs are very low oftentimes. And that means that if I have a bad service experience before, during, or after the sale, it's very easy for me to turn and engage with a different partner. So always remember the importance of making that good impression. It's especially important in this market. Local partnerships are another important aspect. Why? Because this is a big country. Now, that's a very obvious statement. But in the United States, you have 340 million people scattered across a geography that is one of the largest in the world. Now, maybe if you've had the chance to visit the US, you might have seen this for yourself. But what you see in a city like New York is very different from what's on the West Coast and the Midwest and the South. There are urban environments that are completely distinct from one another, where different industries are concentrated. You'll have different cultural and historical ingredients that go into the profile of some of these places. It just changes the way people do business. It changes the way they buy and sell. And so local partnerships are important because you get to piggyback on the expertise of somebody local to you. I'll give you a perfect example. Within the United States, as somebody who's lived most of my life in this country, based in New York, at the time working for a company based in California, one of my jobs was to go into the state of Texas and begin to work with government entities in big urban areas in Texas. And I very quickly learned it didn't matter how good my product was or how smart I could speak about the customer's problem, the customer's solution. They didn't want to hear it from me because I was not from Texas. That's just how business is done. Now, not every place is going to have those kinds of rules and restrictions. It was very important for me to quickly understand that and to start to find local partners. And that means people who not only know the product and know, the problem that we're trying to solve and know how to build relationships, but they know how to also build rapport, right? And speak about things that are meaningful to somebody from that part of the country that somebody from New York have no clue about. And it doesn't hurt if you have an accent and if you, maybe use certain language, you use slang the way a Texan would. Remember, big country, the United States in many ways is like a collection of many subcultures. So don't forget those local partnerships. Now, when it comes to investors, one of the things that we see in this fragmented investor landscape is a lot of sort of sector expertise. And so this goes to Alan's point about finding a lead investor. And Alan, I'm sure this is something you've already been thinking about, but as you look across your roster of interested parties, where is their brand alignment, right? Because a VC is looking to establish expertise and dominance in a category the same way a founder is, the same way an operator or a thought leader or even a professor in an academic environment. Everybody is trying to own something. And so the sector preferences are very fragmented. I was at an event with Techstars earlier this week where I met an investor who is specifically focused on pre-seed and seed companies in the AI space, specifically training sales agents for food service. I said, wow, that's incredible. And you can fill up an entire week, an entire month, an entire year just scouting those companies, talking to them about their business models, helping figure out whether there is a handshake agreement to be had. He said, not only do I do it, but we're 5 people, and that's all we do. So the very, very granular focus, I think, is an important thing to remember with these investors. The definition of traction, there's a lot of different cultural interpretations around the world. Different people will interpret traction differently. In the United States, money talks and data talks. So ARR, MRR, these are important metrics in order to demonstrate some trajectory. Now that goes without saying. But I think there is a lot of openness in this market to look at leading indicators, to look at metrics that could be leading indicators of the traction that is forthcoming. Now, Ajmal, you're selling robots, right? These are not widgets that sell for $1.50 a piece. These are big investments made by corporate clients. And so it might be challenging in an early stage to show momentum, right? You get one and then maybe things are quiet for a while. Maybe you get another one 3 months later. So to be able to string this along and say, we are making progress every single week, we need more than just revenue. And in this investor environment, there is an openness to that. Now, if for example, in KC and Tim's case, right, if it's a payment portal, which is the sum of many transactions, right, you might not have that problem. And so you can start to look at transaction volume perhaps within segments to say, not only do we have traction, but we are establishing traction within our core segment, for example, small business owners. And maybe there is an emerging segment, which is expats, whatever the case may be. The last piece is tailored pitches. So these investors are flooded all day, every day with pitch decks. And so if you haven't already heard it, now you're going to hear it. But I think you probably know this, that it's absolutely important to make a strong impression in the very first moment of an introduction. That means the first slide. That means the first line of an email. People are, more than ever, people are, so flooded with noise in this noisy environment. They will give you time, but they make their decisions much quicker than they ever have. And so tailoring your pitch, really investing not only in why does this matter to this investor, but making sure that you can create an emotional appeal as well. Anybody can look at a slide and say, this is a business idea. There's a product behind it that is going to grow. These founders are smart, and it's going to create a lot of traction and eventually revenue growth, customer growth, EBITDA. All the investors get paid, everybody's happy. Those are rational drivers of decisions. But in this environment, very, very infrequently will you find that decisions get made without a little bit of heart as well. It's very easy to appeal to somebody's rational brain. What's harder is appealing to their heart. And that means explaining the problem you're solving in so much detail and creating a real emotional appeal to say, this is a problem that cannot be left unsolved. We are here, we're on a mission. That is everybody wants to hear about your mission. Just don't spend too much time on it. Make your point, get in, get out, and get on with answering their questions. So the last piece is relationship building, and I think this is true all over the world. You have to invest in your networks. As founders, right, you have many, many hats. You have to build the product. You're building the team. You're out there asking for investor connections, and somebody's going to write you a check. But everybody that you meet along the way can be an asset, because their introduction to somebody else who will make an introduction, that network effect is really potentially explosive for you in a very good way. But the other piece is really seeking feedback. And it's very, very important. It's very appreciated in our culture to ask for feedback. You can do it very directly. You can say after a pitch, tell me what you thought. What are the strong points? What are the weak points? What would you do differently if you were me? It's totally okay to ask these questions. I know that in some parts of the world, people aren't this direct, but in the United States, please be very direct. And that means ask bluntly for feedback. The more they can tell you about what's wrong with your pitch, the likelier you are to succeed, because it gives you a chance to focus on the things that need work, rather than congratulating you on the things that look great. Because if all you do is get positive feedback, you go into the next meeting, the one after that, you lead with your strengths, but those weaknesses will always be there. And so when somebody gives you the feedback, we very simply say, thank you for that feedback. Your feedback is going to make me a better founder. It's going to make me a better partner to your firm, to your GPs, to whomever needs to trust me. So it's a very powerful thing to ask for that feedback. Now, when it comes to customer segment profiling, each of these could be explored in more detail. And so I don't want to go too deep on any one topic, knowing that all of your businesses are different. I will focus on this one in the middle here, because I did make a point earlier about customer service. Tony Hsieh is probably someone who's familiar to you. Certainly Zappos, an early success story of the earlier days of the internet. And Tony Hsieh, is unfortunately a sad story, as he passed away some years ago. But what he left the world is, I think, an incredible manual for how to make customers happy. And he literally wrote the book on how to make customers happy. You're looking at it. That's the cover of the book. I highly recommend you read this. This is chock full of inspiration for how to not only take care of your customer, be it a B2C, B2B, government partner, channel partner, whatever the case may be, investors will be impressed with that type of customer centricity. It's one of the things that moves our whole economy here in the U.S. So that's one thing that I do recommend. It's a great book, and it really also it's a good book for founders to read, also because it captures some of the essence of the excitement of building a young company and establishing a vision and then watching it come to life. He writes the book with a lot of heart, and I do recommend it. On the investor side, we went into each of these in some detail. When it comes to establishing, the specialization of the investors you're talking to, everything you need is in Crunchbase or PitchBook. If you're not familiar with these, by all means, get a trial account. You can see in, I believe Crunchbase offers it 7 or 14 days, and you can very quickly understand, what is it that these firms are specialized in? What is their history of dispersing funds to firms just like yours? And it gives you a chance to really walk into these meetings educated. And you will project confidence, not only in yourself, but you will inspire confidence in them once they see that you know that landscape very well. When it comes to defining traction, really, we covered this, right? We talked about some of the objective metrics. So we all know what it looks like to achieve revenue growth and customer growth. But think about some of these subjective ones as well. This is where, in my background in marketing and sales, I tend to think also about how can we convey traction beyond just how much revenue did we raise last quarter, but how have we been recognized in our industry, right? How have we been celebrated for innovation? Earned media is, I think, the best friend of any founder out there, because when you look at how to promote, you start with your owned media, your website, your social media, etc. And what you own, you will use to the extent you can, but there's always going to be a ceiling on how much you can achieve. Now, if you're going to pay your way into the spotlight, that gets very expensive. And without data, because you're a young company, you don't have the data, it's very hard to make those investments work. Over time, it gets easier, but you need traction now, right? You want customers and you want brand awareness now. So in the middle sits earned media. How can you go and make noise and get other people to shine the spotlight on you? So public relations, they've built an industry on earned media. But in these days of the internet, anyone can go out and earn their way into the spotlight. And it really comes down to, I believe, each of you as founders putting yourselves out there. Share your vision, write, speak, present, get in front of customers, get in front of partners, and really kind of shine that light. Don't be afraid, because each of you has a vision that you're obviously bringing to life with your company. Tell the world, earn that media so you don't have to spend money on it. Finally, the tailored pitches. So storytelling is really, in the corporate context, storytelling has undergone this amazing evolution. When I worked at Google, we had on our sales pods, every team that serviced a particular set of accounts, there were account executives, there were account managers, they worked together to basically sell and collect. And every pod had the account planner. And the account planner mistakenly was thought of as the person that's good with slides. But really what the good account planners knew how to do was tell a story. And so on my first job at Google, I was account executive for automotive aftermarket sales. So we were going to brands like Bridgestone and Goodyear, Michelin, right? So manufacturers of tires who also had retail locations to service cars, change tires, and do oil changes and all of that. not a particularly exciting business. But there were two things that were happening in that business that a lot of people didn't understand. First of all, there was it was counter-cyclical. So new cars and aftermarket are counter-cyclical in the sense that in 2013, when this story takes place, new car sales were going like this, and that means that less people are repairing their cars, less people are holding on to their old cars because there are incentives, because they're exciting products, and so people are buying, and that was hurting them in their profits. They go out, they talk to investors in their earnings calls, and they didn't have a good story to tell. We would turn around and give them the story to tell, which is we're finding our customers online. We're finding them in the moments that matter. We are showing up when they need help, when they're stuck on the side of the road. We have built our digital brand to be there in that moment of need. And not only that, but there was another story underlying all of that, which was Amazon's coming for us. And anyone who sells tires or auto parts today, even cars, anyone who sells anything, that story was in the background, but getting louder and louder every day. And in 2013, we were already starting to help them counteract that trend. And so taking the data, taking the business reality, and putting it into a story to make somebody uncomfortable. That's what it was all about. Because when people are uncomfortable, that's when things happen. And so we would work with our partners in e-commerce, in brand, and in media. We would work directly with the client as well as their agencies. We would come together and we would say, this problem needs more investment. And that was the story we would tell to the C-level to make sure that they could send more investment towards building, a stronger digital footprint for these brands. Without that pain, without that discomfort, there was no action, there was no progress, right? And so it's really the same when you're pitching an investor, right? Help them understand the problem that not only are you solving and awake and all hours of the night thinking about how to solve it, hiring the best people in the world to help you solve it, coming up with the best possible plans, but you're giving them a chance to get in on the action, to join hands with you to help solve this problem. How good will it feel for them to be the one that wrote the check that now contributes to solving this problem? That's all they want, is to be part of the solution, right? So never forget the importance of the storytelling. And one of the ways to really see this come to life, on TechCrunch every day they do pitch deck teardowns, and I love the best ones are the ones where they point out that this pitch deck did not make me feel something, because any pitch deck can say something, but if it doesn't make me feel something, what has really been pitched? Nothing, right? Finally, with relationships, we talked about building a network. You don't need me to tell you how important it is to build a network, but think about trade associations, because some of you are in very specific. You're selling into logistics. You're selling into enterprises, right? Like, these are established industries, and being able to become a familiar face, talk the talk, and be a known commodity are very important. So check out some of these resources. Of course, LinkedIn you're familiar with. They trade associations have a presence on LinkedIn, but some of these other ones, at least give you a chance to attend some events and start to meet some people. Seek feedback. We talked about the importance of directness in seeking that feedback. Be receptive, be open to it, right? Use as many channels as you can, face to face, do it online, do it over the phone, go to an event, whatever it might be. Active listening is always appreciated in this culture. And what that means is, basically, when we say, you listen to my pitch deck for 5 minutes, Tell me what you think, right? As they're responding to you, they're speaking from the heart. They're taking time and energy to tell you what they thought. Active listening is not just nodding, taking notes, but it's responding with contextually relevant questions. Okay, so you thought my pitch deck was a little bit weak when describing the the solution that I have to the problem as I've articulated it. What exactly was the weakness? Is it the language that I use to express the problem? Or is it that the solution doesn't fit with the problem? Tell me more, right? So that's a way of responding with a question to show them that I understood and to show them that, I want to build on this feedback. Best way to show thanks for receiving feedback is to take action. To say, hey, I like that. I'm making a change right now. You gave me this idea. I'm going to make an edit in the slide directly. And of course, always show appreciation. There are some great resources to actually solicit feedback directly. And in a moment, I want to show you a solution that my company has come up with. But SurveyMonkey, basically, great solution. I believe it's a global solution. You may already be familiar with it, but this is a great way to survey the audience you already have. If you don't have that audience, if you want to know about that American consumer, for example, before you have those relationships, then you work with a partner like Polefish who can get you in front of that audience at a very, very low price, which is really impressive how far the industry has come in a short time. And that's really what I wanted to show you here. So I don't want to turn this into a pitch, but I do want to present one solution which I think is particularly interesting as you think about landing and expanding in a new market. Everybody's got blind spots. Every business has them, from the largest multinational right down to the mom and pop startup that was founded yesterday. Everybody's got blind spots, and expansion and growth means navigating around those blind spots. And the way you do that while managing risk is by collecting data, right? And so market research, the whole industry was founded on that principle. Now, if you were entering a new market, even 10 years ago, and you said, all right, I want to find 500 people that resemble my target audience, and I want to ask them 10 questions about the problem they face, the potential solutions that exist, some of the competitors to my product that are out there, and what they like, what they don't like. And if somebody were to offer them A, B, and C for X price, would they buy it? 500 people. Doing that kind of research 10 years ago might have cost you tens of thousands of dollars, might have taken you a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. You can now do that for $1,000 in 48 hours. And that's, I showed you Polefish earlier. Mission Flywheel, my company, is partnered with Polefish, where we execute these surveys very quickly for exactly these types of situations. I'll give you an example. One of our clients is a professional service firm. They do app design and microsite development for fintechs, and they're headquartered in London. All of their dev talent, all of the technology people that are doing the building, the engineering, they're all based in Nigeria. And they have a very talented team, and that is how they've built a strong business. Now, the founder came to us and said, I've always wanted to expand into the US. We think our product is pretty good. We do great work. We've got some great logos. There's always a need. There's always demand. I don't know what Americans think about a tech team based in Lagos, Nigeria. What can you tell me? I said, well, I can't tell you anything, but I can help you run a survey where we will find exactly the type of buyer you're hoping to do business with in the US. And we're going to ask them, and we're going to find out. And we're going to ask them not only what do you look for in a partner, but have you ever offshored your development work? Have you offshored it to Africa? Why or why not? For those that did, how did it go? Did you have good results? Would you do it again? And with that data, we were able to assemble a really, really effective brief that became part of their go-to-market strategy for crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And so imagine the confidence that my client felt knowing that there was now some data. Imagine how much easier it is to go and ask an investor, hey, we want to fund this expansion. We have some data that gives us a little bit more confidence. So I bring this up simply to say, here are some visuals. You can see how it works, but I'd be happy to talk more about this for anyone that's interested. I think this is really fascinating because it just eliminates blind spots and gives us all what we need to enter an unfamiliar place. It's also just really, really exciting to see this data come alive. And listening to our customers has never been as much fun as when you run one of these surveys. So I've been talking for a long time. I realize we're almost out of time. I was hoping, to take a few questions if we have any, but just to wrap up, really the idea here was let's talk about some of the nuances of entering the US market. Hopefully we've covered some of that and answered some of your questions, but also real practical advice, some resources, some recommendations, things that you can do, to make your first step really count. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and welcome any questions from the group.
Hi, Paul. I need to leave soon, so I better ask my question.
Sure.
Okay. The survey is very interesting. In fact, I think like most of us here, we are not familiar with the US market. I think, like what I mentioned, we need to leverage, we need to validate our model, see whether we can sell in the US, because like what you mentioned, US is 50 states, 50 different countries. But we want to know whether we can work. So the survey seems interesting, and 1K it's not expensive. I think, in fact, most of our mentors also ask us, you go and do your, go and find out with the market, do a survey, get the Forrester or those research companies to do it for you. But those guys are going to be very expensive. So, Tim, my colleague here, will want to explore with you and see how we can work on that.
Of course.
Survey. Okay, thank you.
Happy to have that conversation with you, and thank you for that feedback.
Hi, this is Daniel. Okay, so question is that we have been pitching quite successfully in the Asia market, but our method doesn't seem to work in the US. Because in the East we like to portray ourselves as capable and create that impression for them to continue on with the remaining 4-minute elevator pitch. But I understand the US, we need to connect with, just give me a minute. So quiet. Yeah, so in the US, I think we need to connect with the heart as you mentioned. We just do not know how that can be done. And I know that time is running out. So maybe Paul, can we connect later on and see if I can work out a pitch and you see if it's good?
Absolutely, Daniel. I think it's a very specific conversation, right? The way it works for Praveen's business and for Amanda's business and it's all going to be different because your vision is unique. Your concept of the problem and your way of fixing it, it's all unique. Not only that, you're an individual. You're Daniel. You have your way of speaking. You have your experiences, and it needs to be authentic. So can only come from your voice. But this is something that I quite enjoy, and I would welcome any of you if you're looking for a way to make your pitch more emotionally appealing. I would personally offer. I'm happy to sit down with you over VC, listen to your pitch, and I'll give you feedback. I've just been telling you for an hour how important it is to ask for feedback. So here I am offering it. I would be happy to do that.
Thank you. Needed that.
Of course.
One last question. So, Paul, see, if you talked about survey, so we have like a primary research, right? But the challenge is in US market, do you have someone, say, for example, we want to reach to say 30 commercial cleaning companies, and we want at the CXO level, the senior management to give their feedback. Is there any company which can help us?
So let me make sure I understood exactly. You're looking for support for what exactly, Praveen?
Survey, say for example, now survey is there. We have a set of questions, right?
Yeah.
But we need to reach to the target audience. I don't have the target audience list, right?
I see. Okay.
So who can help in the target audience?
So you want to define exactly. One thing is, what do I ask these people? You're saying I need to figure out who those people are in the first place.
Correct.
So, the exercise of identifying an ideal customer profile, I think it can be challenging, right? I think it's an iteration. It's something where you start with the best you have, and you go to market with that. And whether it's you or others on your team, whoever's out there engaging in the marketplace starts to collect some feedback. I've got a client right now. Our ICP is based on 5 verticals. And just today we had a long meeting where we asked ourselves, we've been doing this for 3 months. Are we ready to say that these are the 5 verticals? Are there 1 or 2 or 3 that we're ready to cut? And we made the decision we're not ready to cut yet because we're not yet confident enough in the data. But I think that the act of getting out there and testing at ICP is a very, very good experience. You learn a lot very quickly. And I'd be happy to connect with you, Praveen, and show you how my company approaches it. It's one way to do it. There are many ways to do it, but I'd be happy to give you some guidance on how that works.
Yeah, just to clarify, see, right now we were able to identify our target customer. Okay, say for example, now AVM industry is there, which is a major major cleaning service company in US. Okay, we don't have the connects in AVM industry. Okay, so for example, we want to take feedback from 30 commercial cleaning services company, and we don't have the connects. Okay, so there are like someone was mentioning, if we outsource a research, it will be pretty expensive. Okay, so for example, if we give a set of 10 questionnaire, okay, and we want the responses from 30 commercial cleaning services company.
I see. Okay, so these commercial cleaning companies would be your competition.
They're our customers, basically. So
I see. So you're selling directly into them. Well, look, B2B, it's certainly more challenging to find B2B audiences than, if you're going out to the general public, right? So for Amanda selling bubble tea, it's very easy to just reach the general population and then find out how many people out of, let's say, 1,000 like bubble tea enough to go buy one a week or one a month. In your case, there's a much smaller population.
Exactly.
But they are out there. And I can tell you that because this client that I just described to you, the buyer that we are looking for is a professional in the HR organization of Fortune 1000 companies in those 5 verticals. It's manufacturing, it's energy and utilities, healthcare, et cetera. So you're not talking about a lot of people. But the tactic that we use, Praveen, is that we use screening questions. So the survey goes out to a large audience, and then we screen out the vast majority of those people. So if we were to say, for example, if we target professionals with an income above X that live in urban and suburban areas, okay, we can cut out a lot of the people that you don't want to reach. But then the very first thing we ask them is, do you work in the commercial cleaning industry? Or, maybe getting to those 30 companies is not possible with this approach. But what you could do is you could even combine that with some tactical advertising. For example, LinkedIn and the Meta platform, Facebook and Instagram, have very, very good company targeting, where you could provide that list of those 30 companies, and you could say, I only want those people to see this survey. Now, there are some tricks to merging the survey design with the advertising exposure, so it gets a little more complicated. But if it's something that you want to explore further, I'm happy to discuss it with you.
Sure. Thank you.
Great. Well, it looks like we're a little bit over time. Thank you for hanging in there and for listening to me talk. But if there aren't any other questions, I appreciate the chance to speak with you all, hear a little bit about what you're working on, and please don't be a stranger. Feel free. I put my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to connect, and I'd love to see where this journey takes you.
Sure.
Paul, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Just a couple of reminders. Please take
Thank
the
you so much.
survey if you haven't already, and be on the lookout for our email, end of week email with details on next week. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone soon.
Okay. See you guys.
Thank you, Paul,
Bye.
again.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.